If you go downstairs into the mall in Jujutsu Shenanigans, and check out the painting where Illusions 2 was, you'll find that painting has been replaced by another game. That game, one of the most unique fighting games on Roblox, is Theater of Light. Theater of Light is a Library of Ruina themed fighting game that does a lot of things differently from other games. It makes passive play harder with a lack of defensive options, heavily encourages aggression, has very little standard mechanics across each of its characters, with all of them being very different, and has plenty of other mechanics stacked on top of all of that to add plenty of complexity to the combat. This video is going to be an introduction to Theater of Light, and a review by someone who plays a lot of JJS. We'll start off with how the game works, and then move on to what makes this game so special when you compare it to other fighting games the platform has. Before we do get started, consider subscribing, and now let's talk about Theater of Light. First, let's explain what this game is. It's a 3D fighting game on Roblox where you 1v1 people in a queue. There's 6 people in a server max, and 4 people can fight at a time with 2 1v1s happening on 2 different stages. If you hate teamers, good for you, because that will never be a problem here. It's only once. The game has a decently large roster of characters, and each one is genuinely unique, with no character really playing the same. To kind of put that in perspective, Battleground games usually have standardized attacks and design, with all characters having the same side dash M1s, a forward dash, and then some moves that combo extend, plus maybe one move that's good for neutral. Theater of Light instead changes up everything. For example, Samurai's M1 is a simple slash. Gunner's is him shooting bullets from his gun. Vigilante's is a really fast but short-range kick, but unlike most M1s, he can keep pressing M1 to follow up with more kicks. Assassin's is a slow slash, which has the benefit of doing super high damage and bypassing block. Informant either does a short-range kick, a medium-range stab, or a long-range thrust, depending on if you were holding S, or if you held down the input, and then there's just so many more examples I could go over, but you probably get the point. Then on top of all of that, everyone has their own unique special, their own unique Qs and Es, and then their own special attacks that are done through something different than just pressing one button. I'll elaborate on this uniqueness later, but let's move on to the other mechanics. The red bar is your health, reach 0, you die. The yellow bar is your stagger. Stagger runs out from being damaged or blocked, and if it runs out, you're stunned. Functionally, this just allows people to extend their combos even more when it does happen for more damage. The 3 hexagons at the top are your lives. You have 3 lives each match, and whoever runs out first loses. In the middle at the top is emotion level. Emotion level progresses through dealing or taking damage, and unlocks certain moves on your character, and buffs that depend on your pages. Pages are buffs you select before the match starts, that all do different things, or if you go pageless, give you these buffs. These buffs are unlocked at their respective emotion level. Meanwhile, the hexagons down here are light. Some skills on hit make you gain it, and you can also gain 1 light every time a combo ends, for both you and the opponent. It's a nice solution to Library of Ruina, where every combo can be thought of as a turn, and when the combo ends, you move on to the next turn and gain 1 light. Anyways, light is a resource your character uses to do certain attacks that cost it. Some stronger combos can only be done with a certain amount of light, and if you move spam too much in neutral, and miss everything, you might be left with no light and be significantly weakened. It helps add depth to combos, but more importantly curbs move spamming on some characters, and forces you to manage it if your character uses it a lot. Each character has their own moves for pressing M1, referred to as attack, Q, referred to as skill 1, E, called skill 2, or spacebar, called special. Then they generally have a bunch of other moves that are done through those skills, plus some sort of other action or condition. Moving on, let's talk about how you defend yourself with universal mechanics. Something you'll notice with Theater of Light specifically is that it has much less defensive options than other fighting games. Notably, you can't block. No block that completely denies your opponent the ability to hit you if you're facing the right direction, no decaying block that goes down over time the longer you hold it, not even a block that blocks everything but makes you take chip damage and can be bypassed with throws. Theater of Light does not have traditional blocking. Instead, your defensive options are based around movement, clashing, and using some skills specific to certain characters to avoid attacks. The universal ones are dashing and clashing. Dashing by pressing V while holding a movement key will move you in that direction. This has an extremely short cooldown, you can do it in any direction, and you can keep dashing to move around very fast. This makes the game's neutral extremely mobile, and you'll see in my background footage that in fights, people are constantly dashing around to stay on their feet, and to get in to land their own attack. It's at the core of your defense and offense. Meanwhile, clashing is akin to a parry, though it's a little bit complicated. Pressing V while not holding any input will make you flash orange, and if you get hit during that flash, it depends. Each character has their own clash power, and if the opponent's attack has damage equal or lower than that character's clash power, they'll be pushed back, and it'll reset to neutral. Clashing an attack from far away will instead move you forward with iframes to help you deal with zoning. The complicated part is that if the attack has more damage than the character's clash power, then it'll just hit through the clash. That makes clashing a little bit unreliable, since it isn't just press V and negate an attack. The interaction changes depending on what attack you're trying to avoid, and the amount of clash power your character has. Then, there's two more character-specific defensive options: blocking and dodging. No, they're not the same as what normally comes to mind. Some characters have moves that make them block. If hit by an attack that doesn't have the block break property, it'll repel the attacker, deal stagger damage to them, and stun them long enough to usually start a combo. If you miss, usually you get put in a heavy end lag. These moves are more akin to counters if anything, and only some characters have them, like Samurai's hold S1 or Assassin's S2. Then for the other option, there's dodging. Some moves give the characters iframes, and if they get hit by something during that time, they'll dodge, which makes them regain stagger. I think it's best to look at this as moves with invincibility frames. The cool thing about this kind of design is that it heavily discourages passive play. Every attack in Theater of Light is quite fast. There's some stuff you can react to in neutral, sure, but for most of it you'll have to predict if you want to clash, and the stuff you can react to might do too much damage for you to clash it. Even if you have a block, there's frames of startup, which means you have to predict they'll attack in advance, and if they intentionally miss, most blocks have enough end lag that they can actually punish you off that. Like a traditional fighting game, playing passive is just one playstyle out of many that may or may not work, rather than the most optimal way to do things, as is the case with most Battleground games. And when it comes to neutral, Theater of Light might honestly be the best out of any game on Roblox. They even made zoners work and be actually fair to fight. It's a kind of fast-paced neutral that doesn't get boring, because you're always encouraged to be doing something, and what that something is changes depending on the situation. With how much movement the game gives you, the strategy of running away and spamming moves doesn't work, because what's going to happen is you're going to whiff your move, be stuck in end lag, and the opponent gets the opportunity to either get closer, or if they're close enough, just hit you with their own move and start a combo. It leads to a very fast-paced neutral, where the emphasis is more about dodging around and trying to catch the opponent out of their dashes, or whiff punish them for missing you, or using one of your character-specific defensive options and playing around that. Turtling up is not a very reliable strategy here, and it avoids the problem of so-called passive players that plague Roblox fighting games, where people just stare at each other and hold block, waiting for the other guy to get in. Aggression is encouraged. All of this is taught to you through the game's tutorial as well, and you can read about it in the game's credenza, which also has other information. All these mechanics make Theater of Light a very unique fighting game. Dashes not being on a cooldown and a lack of traditional defensive options, I think, are the most standout traits besides the general complexity with characters. It leads to a very free-flow combat more akin to a traditional fighting game than what you get with most games where they put dashes on cooldown. In general, everything about Theater of Light would be closer to a traditional fighting game than your average Roblox fighter, and it translates a lot of these elements that generally haven't meshed well with Roblox into a 3D space, doing it in a very creative way that actually makes it kind of work. Take the issue of zoners in a 3D space. Normally, this translates into running away and playing for cooldowns when you try to put it into most Roblox fighters, because they're designed around moves having cooldowns and dashes having cooldowns. This encourages a zoner to play keep away because they can't do anything unless their move is off cooldown, and it stops the other guy from getting in, not because of the zoner denying them with their moves, but because they just don't have enough movement to actually close the gap. So, what Theater of Light does is give you very quick movement options plus a wall, and give zoners small end lag so that each missed attack lets the other guy get closer. You can still shut people out, but it's not like Hanami where that boils down to run away and spam the root spike. It's more about reading your opponent in a rock paper scissors game that lets you get in if you play correctly. In general, you'll find most of the problems that stop Battleground games from really being competitive aren't present in Theater of Light. Passive play is hard, running gets you backed into a corner which is bad, approaching people is easy because you have high mobility, Move spamming isn't an issue because stronger moves tend to cost light, and the neutral options that don't cost light have some other way to counter them that can put the user at risk if the opponent reads them. And every character having completely different offensive options makes the game's neutral never really boil down to side dash M1 or some other universal mechanic. Another thing about Theater of Light is that again, like traditional fighters, there's a lot of depth to your combos. Because you unlock more moves as a fight goes on due to emotion level, or passives because of the ego pages, or have more or less moves because of the light you started a combo with, or not all combo starters being able to lead into the same combo, your combos will be constantly changing. I'm kind of bad at a lot of the complex characters, so I'll be using Samurai as an example. Say you combo started with your S1 sweet spot and you did it at 2 light. You used 1 light to use S1, so now you're at 1, and your M1 gives you another, so you can do a nice simple combo like this for lots of damage. If you, however, had 1 light when starting the combo, then you'll be at 0, and your options from there are to either do 2 M1s, which ends the combo, or do M1 sweet spot loops, which for one are kind of hard to do, and also do less damage than the combo I mentioned before. Then there's other stuff like emotion level that lets you access other options for even more damage, yada yada yada. Your combo routes are very restrictive, and it definitely can't be broken down into move that hits ragdoll plus move that hits ragdoll. I do think Theater of Light is absolutely worth a try if you want a refreshing game that changes up the pace. It doesn't have shenanigans or anything, there is no big map for those kind of moments to happen, nor anything besides a 1v1, but it's just honest 1v1s through and through for the people who like that. The large roster also lets you try something different whenever you want to. Super mobile rushdown character, fighter and bandit do that really well. Zoner that plays keep away and uses projectiles to deal damage, gunner, that's also Z's main by the way. Want a character who really wants to keep people at a certain distance for sweet spots to deal big damage? Informant and Brawler both have their own takes on that. How about some gimmick character that spends light to teleport around and be extremely difficult to hit and defend against? Assassin, who I sort of main and is very brain dead, does that. It's a really varied roster of something for everyone. That being said, I do want to talk about the difficulties with getting into the game because they're worth mentioning. This isn't so much a criticism as it is an observation, since I think criticism implies something bad, but the game is really difficult to learn. A friend described it as a game made by fighting game freaks for fighting game freaks, and I'm inclined to agree. Combos are strict compared to other fighting games on Roblox, and that's especially true if you compare it to Battleground games specifically, where combos are almost always very lenient. Theater of Light needs you to follow specific combo routes. Timing tends to matter in a lot of combos, with them dropping if you do it too early or too late, and you have to make the inputs quite fast or else the combo will drop. Do it too late or early and they'll get out of stun, get that small iframe you get after stun ends, and probably punish you if you went for some failed combo link that now whiffed because of their iframe. Even compared to non-Roblox fighting games though, I would consider Theater of Light to be pretty strict. Exclude Samurai and Assassin, those characters are pretty easy, and I think anyone can pick them up by just reading the kits and seeing what their buttons do. However, the vast majority of the roster really wants you to spend time in the lab to know what you're doing and how each button works, and figure out a bread and butter combo before you can even begin to use them. Definitely far more than a Battleground game, and in my opinion, even more than other more traditional fighters. I know most of my audience is JGS, so let's compare. In JGS, every character has the same base usually. The side dash, the M1, the forward dash, whatever. Some characters switch it up a bit. The most notable example is Hanami, but Naoya and Ryu kind of do it too. But generally, your skills will always transition between every character. This is because of neutral, you can always fall back onto side dash M1 or just basic M1 trading, and then the only thing you have to learn is combos, which also isn't that hard since most are the same between characters. Usually some kind of 1-2-3-4 combo where you maybe throw M1s in. And then if a character has it, neutral. Even with the case of neutral, it's never hard to learn it either. For one, there's only like 7 characters in JJS with actual neutral, and it always breaks down to either some pressure tool to help you get in, like Rapid Escape or Littering, or some move that can combo start when you press it if the opponent doesn't respond correctly, which is the case for like 90% of moves in JJS. Then let's go to Theater of Light. Some mechanics are universal, sure. Clashing, dashing, being able to walk, but that's where it ends, and notice that those are all your defensive options. This kind of uniqueness with every character is amazing in one aspect, which is that it makes the game very diverse and prevents it from getting stale. Like, fighting a Akari versus fighting a Toto is the exact same experience in JJS. They're both M1 merchants, and it's gonna ultimately boil down to block the side dash M1 and then just kill them. But in Theater of Light, your experience fighting an assassin will never be the same as fighting a gunner, or fighting a courier, or fighting a brawler. Your game plan has to change depending on who you fight. On the other hand, it makes every character need to be individually learned and take some time just studying the character before you can actually begin to do anything at all. If you pick a random character off the chart, read their move list, and go into a match, I'm 90% sure you will get absolutely murdered and 3-stocked, unless the other guy also doesn't know anything about the character, in which case neither of you do much damage and the round times out. It's not really a bad thing, but more so one of those design choices that are going to appeal to some people and completely turn away others, which is why I don't really see this game being big with most Battleground players, or really just Roblox in general. If you don't have the attention span to spend time learning a character in the lab, which for JJS players is like testing a character on a dummy or in a private server, then you'll be stuck on easier characters like Samurai and Assassin for a very long time. That doesn't detract from the combat though, it's still fun even in spite of that, but like traditional fighting games which tend to be complex, getting decent is hard. I do think this game would really benefit from some kind of difficulty indicator on each character, but they don't really have that, which I think is one of the factors that makes a new player experience kind of bad. They do use Samurai in a tutorial, and he is arguably the best beginner character, so that's kind of an indicator, but it's not unrealistic for people to be floundering around with trying out characters that are extremely difficult to learn when they've just started out. The other issue with the new player experience is the same thing that happens with any small community, and it's that there isn't a lot of bad players to make the onboarding experience better. Like, in JJS, besides the game being naturally kind of easy, it's such a huge and popular game that you'll find some drooling 5-year-old you can beat up and get an ego boost from. Theater of Light, as a smaller game, has a lot of very good players that make up the majority of the player base, and will absolutely stomp on you if you don't know what you're doing. It's not going to be easy for someone to figure out what they're doing wrong if they keep getting dodged by a ranger jumping into the air and then dive kicking them into some combo for a third of their health. And it's going to feel like what you're playing against is unfair, because you don't understand what's going on. Established games fix this with third-party resources to teach people, and a ranked system that lets you fight against nut jobs who also don't know what they're doing when you start out. But Theater of Light doesn't have a ranked system. You just fight people in the server, which also isn't great for other reasons, and while there is a Mizumi wiki, and also forums for each character on the Discord, that resource isn't one people will easily find when starting out, nor are those resources even fully developed yet. With 2D fighters, I think it's easier to find stuff out by just going into ranked and screwing around, because you have normals and stuff, and an emphasis on block pressure, and all of these other things to where button mashing can kind of work, and some skills transfer throughout characters. In that enclosed space, just throwing something out is going to hit at least 1 out of 10 times. Meanwhile, mashing buttons in Theater of Light just won't connect with someone and you're gonna get punished. Not that spamming should be rewarded, but the different format makes that kind of gameplay a lot less forgiving than it would be in something like Guilty Gear Strive. Other than that though, Theater of Light is really good as a fighting game. It's fun, refreshing, the combat's well designed and fast. Generally though, it's just a good game all around. Nothing is locked behind progression besides cosmetics, and unlike AL2, where some cosmetics can take weeks to get because of how expensive they are, stuff in Theater of Light that you'd want can get unlocked really fast. The prices are low. If you are starting out though, I recommend Samurai as a character. He's the most basic and has pretty much everything. His combos are simple, his neutral works at close and mid-range, and he can kind of just do everything while also being decently forgiving. Another easy character is Assassin, though it's because they're a bit gimmicky and play around that instead. Their whole deal is dashing around and your neutral is pretty much just your Q plus your fast movement, with combos being extremely simple and only taking 2 buttons minimum to do good damage. With that though, that's all I really have to say about the game. It's a great experience for what it is, and there's a lot of good fun to be had with it. I'd recommend checking it out with a friend just as inexperienced as you though, unless you want to brave public servers, since I think it makes the experience better learning with somebody rather than by yourself. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, it helps me with making more content. I'm Noob Eternally, thanks for watching, and have a good day. Bye.